Have you ever stared at a bare patch of soil for 3 straight weeks, wondering if the seeds you planted were completely dead? You are definitely not alone. Every spring, millions of gardeners waste hours of back-breaking labor digging beds and sowing tiny seeds, only to be rewarded with a patchy, disappointing harvest. But what if I told you that you have been skipping one vital 5-minute step that changes absolutely everything? Today, we are talking about a specific method to make your dill and other stubborn greens literally explode from the ground in a fraction of the usual time. Forget the endless weeding, the heavy digging, and the daily watering routines that tie you down to your vegetable beds. I am going to show you how lazy, smart gardening can actually triple your harvest while you sit back and relax. You might have heard that these seeds just naturally take a long time to wake up, but that is a complete myth. I am about to reveal a controversial seed preparation trick that most traditional farmers think is crazy. Stick with me because by the end of this video, your approach to planting will be changed forever. Tell me in the comments right now, what is the longest you have ever waited for a bed of greens to finally sprout? To truly understand why this secret method works like absolute magic, we need to look at how nature designs these seeds in the first place. Plants like dill, parsley, and carrots produce seeds that are heavily armed for survival. They are completely coated in a thick, dense layer of highly concentrated essential oils. In the wild, this oil acts as a powerful, waterproof armor. It prevents the seed from sprouting during a random warm day in the middle of winter, which would be a fatal mistake. The oil ensures the seed only wakes up after the heavy, continuous rains of late spring have thoroughly washed the protective coating away. But in our cultivated gardens, we do not want to wait for weeks of heavy rain. When we practice smart gardening, our goal is to hack this biological system. We want to tell the seed that winter is over and the heavy rains have already passed, triggering an immediate and explosive growth response. By manipulating this natural oil barrier, we take total control over the germination timeline, saving ourselves weeks of anxiety and empty garden beds. Let us dive right into the core secret that will revolutionize your planting routine. The most critical step happens in your kitchen, not out in the garden dirt. Because those tiny seeds are wearing that waterproof jacket of essential oils, soaking them in plain cold water does absolutely nothing. The cold water simply bounces right off the oil, just like rain rolling off a freshly waxed car. To break that barrier instantly, you need to use a brief, intense shock treatment. Many smart gardeners use hot water, heated to exactly 120 degrees Fahrenheit. You place the seeds in a small cloth bag and submerge them in this hot water for exactly 20 minutes. The heat acts as a gentle solvent. It rapidly melts away the invisible oil coating without cooking the fragile life inside the seed. You will actually see the water change color and smell a strong, spicy aroma as the oils release. This simple action mimics weeks of natural weathering in just 20 minutes, tricking the seed into believing it is time to wake up immediately. Now, if you want an even faster and more powerful method that requires zero temperature measuring, we turn to the lazy gardener's best friend. I am talking about using a common household spirit, like plain vodka or any strong, clear alcohol. This might sound absolutely crazy, but alcohol is a natural, highly efficient solvent for essential oils. You simply pour a small amount of vodka into a little glass and drop your seeds in for exactly 15 minutes. Do not leave them in any longer than 15 minutes, or you risk damaging the embryo. During this short bath, the alcohol aggressively strips away the waterproof armor much faster than water ever could. It dissolves the barrier completely. After the 15 minutes are up, you must rinse the seeds thoroughly under fresh, cold running water to wash away the alcohol and the dissolved oils. This method is incredibly fast, perfectly safe if timed right, and results in a germination rate that will leave your neighbors speechless. It is the ultimate shortcut for the smart homesteader. There is a very crucial step that follows the hot water or alcohol bath, and skipping it will turn your planting day into a complete nightmare. Once your seeds are fully washed and the oil barrier is gone, they will be soaking wet and sticking together in massive clumps. If you try to take these wet seeds out to the garden, you will end up dropping huge globs of them into one spot, resulting in terrible overcrowding. The smart approach is to spread these freshly washed seeds out on a dry paper towel or a piece of plain cotton cloth. Leave them in a warm, dry place inside your house for about 2 hours. You do not want to bake them in the sun. You just want the surface moisture to evaporate. When they are dry to the touch, they will easily crumble and separate in your fingers. This allows you to scatter them perfectly and evenly across your garden beds. Taking this brief pause to let them dry saves you the immense physical hassle of trying to thin out thousands of tiny, tangled plants later in the season. Let us move out into the garden and talk about the lazy way to prepare your soil, because heavy digging is officially a thing of the past. Traditional advice tells you to grab a heavy shovel and turn over the earth until your back aches. But smart gardening relies on the no-dig method. When you violently flip the soil, you are destroying the microscopic fungal networks and bringing millions of dormant weed seeds right up to the surface, where they will steal sunlight from your crops. Instead, simply leave the ground alone. If the soil is hard, just add a layer of rich, loose compost about 2 inches thick right on top of the existing dirt. Treat your garden bed like a layer cake. This fresh top layer provides a perfectly soft, nutrient-dense blanket for your treated seeds to root into. The worms and natural soil creatures will do all the heavy tilling and digging for you beneath the surface. You preserve your energy, protect the soil structure, and create the absolute perfect environment for explosive, unimpeded root growth. Timing your planting is just as critical as the seed preparation itself, and this is where many people make a massive mistake. You do not need to wait for the warm days of late spring to plant these specific greens. In fact, waiting too long is a recipe for disaster. These plants actually thrive in cool weather and absolutely despise the baking heat of midsummer. As long as the soil is workable and not frozen solid, you can get these treated seeds into the ground. They are incredibly tough and can easily survive light spring frosts. If you plant them when the weather is too hot, the plant panics. It skips the leafy growth stage completely and immediately shoots up a tall, woody stalk to produce flowers and seeds, ruining your harvest. By planting early in the cool, crisp spring air, you encourage the plant to produce massive amounts of thick, tender, flavorful leaves over a long period. Smart gardening is about matching the plant to its preferred natural rhythm, not forcing it into the summer heat. One of the most common and fatal errors I see beginners make is burying their seeds entirely too deep in the soil. Remember how small these seeds are. They contain only a microscopic amount of stored energy. If you bury them under an inch of heavy, wet dirt, they will exhaust all their energy trying to push through the darkness and die before they ever see the sun. Think of them like tiny solar panels that need immediate light. The smartest and laziest way to plant them is to not bury them at all. Simply broadcast the treated, dried seeds over the surface of your prepared compost layer. Then, instead of burying them, just take a standard garden rake and lightly scratch the surface of the soil back and forth. You only want the seeds to be covered by the thinnest dust of soil, barely a fraction of an inch. They need to feel the warmth of the sun and the light to trigger their explosive growth. Keeping them near the surface guarantees a massive, even carpet of brilliant green sprouts. If you live in a colder climate and still have snow on the ground in early spring, I have a phenomenal lazy hack for you. It is called snow sowing, and it requires 0 tools and almost 0 effort. Instead of waiting for the ground to completely thaw and dry out, you take your prepared seeds and literally throw them right on top of the melting snow covering your garden beds. Because the seeds are dark, they absorb the warmth of the spring sun and slowly melt their way down through the snowbank. As the snow slowly melts into the soil, it acts as a gentle, natural hydraulic press. The melting water pulls the seeds down exactly to the perfect microscopic depth and ensures perfect contact with the muddy earth. You do not have to rake, you do not have to dig, and you do not have to water. Nature handles the entire planting process for you. When the snow is finally gone, your seeds are already perfectly positioned and primed to explode the second the soil warms up just a few degrees. Let us talk about garden alliances, because placing the right plants next to each other is the ultimate strategy for a hands-off harvest. You should never plant your crops in isolated blocks. Instead, use companion planting to let the plants help each other grow. For example, planting these fragrant greens directly next to your cabbage or cucumber plants is a brilliant move. The strong, spicy essential oils in the growing leaves act as an invisible chemical fortress. They naturally confuse and repel the destructive cabbage moths and beetles that want to devour your other vegetables. At the same time, the large, sweeping leaves of the cucumber plants provide much-needed shade for the soil, keeping the roots of your fragrant greens cool and moist during the hotter parts of the day. It is a perfect, lazy partnership. They protect each other, they share the space efficiently, and they save you from having to buy expensive organic pest sprays or spend hours picking bugs off your precious crops. Just as there are great alliances in the garden, there are also bitter enemies that you must keep far apart. Never make the mistake of planting your fragrant greens anywhere near your carrots or your fennel. This is a massive error that can ruin your entire season's effort. These plants are closely related in the botanical world, which means they send their roots down to the exact same depth and aggressively compete for the exact same specific nutrients in the soil. They will literally starve each other to death. Even worse, if you let them flower, they can actually cross-pollinate with each other. This ruins the pure, distinct flavor you are trying to cultivate, leaving you with strange, bitter-tasting hybrids next year. Always give them their own distinct zones in your raised beds. A smart gardener acts like a city planner, organizing the neighborhoods so that everyone lives in harmony and nobody is fighting over the same plate of food. This simple planning prevents endless, mysterious problems later on. Now we need to address a very persistent myth about feeding your plants. Many enthusiastic gardeners think that piling massive amounts of rich, fresh manure or heavy nitrogen fertilizers onto the bed will give them giant, beautiful plants. This is a catastrophic mistake for these specific types of fragrant herbs. While heavy fertilizer might make the plant grow tall very fast, it completely destroys the internal chemistry. The plant becomes incredibly weak, floppy, and vulnerable to every disease in the area. More importantly, excess nitrogen completely dilutes the essential oils inside the leaves. You will end up with a huge, impressive-looking plant that smells like absolute nothing and tastes like plain water. These plants actually prefer a slightly lean diet. The simple layer of compost we discussed earlier is all the food they will ever need. By practicing lazy gardening and withholding heavy fertilizers, you force the plant to concentrate its natural oils, resulting in the intense, mouth-watering flavor you actually want. Another common habit among homesteaders is dumping large amounts of wood ash from the winter fireplace directly onto the vegetable beds. While wood ash is a fantastic source of potassium, you must be incredibly careful when using it around these specific greens. Wood ash is highly alkaline. If you dump too much of it on the soil, you will drastically raise the pH level, making the earth sweet. These plants absolutely hate highly alkaline soil. When the soil becomes too sweet, a chemical lock occurs underground. The roots become entirely unable to absorb iron and other vital trace minerals, no matter how much water you give them. The leaves will turn a sickly, pale yellow, and the growth will violently stall. If you want to be a smart, low-effort gardener, keep the wood ash away from this part of the garden entirely. Let the natural, neutral balance of your compost do the work. Sometimes, doing absolutely nothing is the most scientifically sound decision you can make for your harvest. Watering is where most gardeners waste the most time and cause the most damage. Standing in the garden every single evening with a hose, lightly sprinkling the top of the soil, is a terrible habit. When you only wet the top inch of dirt, you train the plant's roots to stay near the surface. The moment the hot afternoon sun bakes that top layer, your plants will wilt and die. To be a lazy and efficient gardener, you must water deeply but very infrequently. Think of the water like a deep underground river. When you do water, soak the bed thoroughly so the moisture travels several inches down into the earth. Then, do not water again for several days. This forces the taproot to dive deep into the soil, searching for that hidden moisture. A deep root system creates an incredibly tough, drought-resistant plant that can easily survive a missed watering or a sudden heat wave. You save hours of standing around with the hose, and your plants become incredibly self-sufficient. To make that deep watering strategy work perfectly, you must embrace the ultimate lazy gardener's secret weapon, and that is mulch. Bare soil is a crime against nature. When the sun hits bare dirt, the moisture evaporates instantly, the ground cracks, and weed seeds germinate by the thousands. To stop this completely, simply take dry grass clippings, shredded leaves, or clean straw and spread a 2-inch blanket all around the base of your newly sprouted plants. This mulch acts like a powerful insulating roof for the soil. It blocks the sunlight from reaching the weed seeds, meaning you will almost never have to bend over and weed the bed. It also traps the moisture from your deep watering, keeping the earth cool and damp for days on end. Mulching is the single most effective way to eliminate physical labor in the garden. You apply it once in the early spring, and it quietly works for you 24 hours a day, protecting your crop until the final harvest. Understanding the sun is vital for a long-lasting harvest. While almost all vegetables need full sun to produce fruit, growing leafy greens requires a slightly different strategy. If you plant them in a spot that gets blasted by the scorching afternoon sun from dawn until dusk, the soil will overheat. As we discussed earlier, this heat triggers the panic response, causing the plant to bolt, flower, and turn bitter almost immediately. The smart placement strategy is to find a spot in your yard that gets brilliant, direct morning sunlight, but falls into the cool shadows during the hottest part of the late afternoon. You can easily create this ideal environment by planting them on the eastern side of taller crops like pole beans or massive tomato plants. The taller plants act as a living umbrella, protecting the delicate greens from the brutal afternoon heat. This lazy positioning trick can easily extend your harvest window by an additional 4 to 6 weeks. Let us talk about pests, specifically the tiny green aphids that inevitably show up on the stems of your fresh greens. The absolute worst thing you can do is run to the store and buy chemical pesticides. You are growing these plants to eat the leaves raw in your salads, so spraying poison is out of the question. The lazy and highly effective method for dealing with aphids requires nothing more than your garden hose. Aphids have incredibly weak legs. Simply adjust your hose nozzle to a sharp, concentrated stream of water and blast the stems of the plants early in the morning. The water pressure easily knocks the bugs off the plant and straight into the wet dirt below. Because they are so weak, they cannot climb back up before the predatory ground beetles eat them. Do this twice a week, and you will keep the population entirely under control without ever mixing a single drop of toxic spray. It is clean, it takes exactly 10 seconds, and it is completely free. One of the hardest psychological barriers for a new gardener to overcome is the act of thinning the seedlings. When your explosive germination trick works, you will have a thick, dense carpet of hundreds of tiny green plants. Human nature makes us want to keep every single one of them. But if you are greedy and leave them all packed together, you will ruin the entire crop. It is like cramming 300 people into a tiny subway car. Nobody has room to breathe, nobody gets enough food, and disease spreads instantly. Airflow completely stops, and fungal rot will wipe out the bed overnight. You must be ruthless. Once the plants are 2 inches tall, simply pull out the weaker ones until there is at least 4 to 6 inches of clear space between each remaining plant. Do not throw the ones you pulled out away. Wash them and throw them directly into a fresh salad. By giving the remaining plants the space they need, they will grow massive, thick, and healthy, yielding 10 times more food than a crowded bed ever could. If you want to have a continuous, never-ending supply of fresh, tender greens from spring all the way until the heavy autumn frosts, you must practice succession sowing. Most people plant their entire packet of seeds on one day in the spring. They get one massive harvest. The plants eventually go to seed, and then they have nothing left for the rest of the year. The smart strategy is to set up a slow, steady conveyor belt of food. Only plant 1/3 of your prepared seeds in the first week of spring. Then, wait exactly 3 weeks and plant another small patch. Wait another 3 weeks and plant the final patch. By the time your first group of plants is getting old and starting to lose its flavor, your second group is just reaching the perfect stage for harvesting. This requires very little extra effort, just a few minutes of scattering seeds once a month. But it guarantees that you will never run out of young, perfect, highly aromatic greens for your kitchen. The way you harvest your plants drastically affects how long they will survive and continue producing. The most common mistake is going into the garden and simply pulling the entire plant up by the roots when you need a handful of leaves for dinner. That is a terrible waste of all the time and energy you put into growing the root system. Instead, you need to harvest using the cut and come again method. Take a clean, sharp pair of scissors and carefully snip only the outermost, oldest leaves from the very base of the plant. Always leave the central, growing heart of the plant completely untouched. By only taking the outside layers, you leave the plant's solar panels intact. The strong root system remains in the ground, pumping energy up into the center, instantly generating a flush of brand new leaves. This lazy harvesting technique turns a single plant into a continuous biological factory, giving you multiple heavy harvests from the exact same root system over several months. Eventually, despite all your clever tricks, the high heat of late summer will arrive, and a few of your plants will finally shoot up a tall, thick stalk and produce those beautiful, yellow, umbrella-shaped flowers. When this happens, do not rip them out of the ground in frustration. This is actually the final phase of your lazy gardening master plan. Those flowers are incredibly valuable. First, they attract thousands of microscopic parasitic wasps and ladybugs, which are the ultimate beneficial predators that will wipe out any remaining pests in your yard. Secondly, and most importantly, you are going to let those flowers dry out and turn brown right there on the stalk. Do not cut them. Let the autumn winds naturally shake the seed heads, scattering thousands of fresh seeds completely free of charge all over your garden bed. Nature is doing the sowing for you. By allowing just 2 or 3 plants to fully go to seed in the late summer, you are setting up the ultimate hands-free harvest for the following year. Those dropped seeds will sit quietly under the winter snow, protected by their natural oils, exactly as nature intended. When spring arrives again, without you ever having to buy a packet, prepare the seeds, or dig the soil, a brand new generation of perfectly adapted volunteers will explode from the earth all on their own. This is the absolute pinnacle of lazy, smart homesteading. You have created a perpetual, self-sustaining loop of food production. You transition from being a laborer who constantly fights the dirt to a manager who simply guides the natural systems. Your garden becomes a wild, resilient ecosystem that practically feeds you on autopilot, rewarding you with the freshest, most vibrant flavors imaginable for years to come. And there you have it, the complete blueprint for explosive growth and maximum yields with absolute minimum effort. We have covered the secret to melting away that stubborn seed armor in just 5 minutes, saving you weeks of frustrating waiting. We explored why abandoning the heavy shovel and embracing the no-dig compost layer method builds superior soil and saves your spine. From the clever use of snow sowing to the strategic alliances of companion planting, you now possess the knowledge to outsmart the traditional labor-intensive farming habits. Remember, the goal is not to work harder in the dirt, but to work smarter alongside nature. By managing moisture with deep watering and mulch, avoiding the trap of harsh chemical fertilizers, and setting up a perpetual self-seeding cycle, your garden will essentially run on autopilot. This smart approach guarantees a lush, fragrant harvest that will supply your kitchen from the first thaw of spring until the late autumn frosts. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time with me today. If you found these lazy gardening secrets valuable, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like so we can continue bringing you the best homesteading strategies. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the biggest gardening disaster you have ever experienced when trying to grow fresh herbs? Drop your story in the comments below and let us learn from each other's experiences. See you in the next video, and happy growing!